Coming up in this episode...
I mean, I struggled to even label the film.
Lions.
That was a good... Yeah, definitely. I see it now.
Hello and welcome to the Silver Hedgehog Hogcast. I am Garry, and today we are recording green screen, and we're going to be talking about Secondhand Lions. Joining me on the podcast today are my co-hosts, Chelsea from Not Just Yoga.
Hello, it's nice to be back.
We've got David Scato, and he is a writer, director, producer, and general genius over in America. Hello.
Hello. Well, thank you for that nice welcome.
So today's episode is all about a film called Secondhand Lions. And Chelsea, I think you picked it last time we spoke.
I did.
At the end of our last episode, which was Rambo. And why did you pick Secondhand Lions as a film for us to watch and discuss in this episode?
Well, speaking to you and Stuart at the time, who'd between you see nearly everything, it was quite difficult to find a film that neither of you had seen. And the only one I could think of was Secondhand Lions. Now, I don't know about the rest of the world, but in England, it seems that nobody had ever heard of it, except me and my cousin who originally recommended it to me. So even though it's got proper actors in it, it just seemed to have bypassed everybody, which is a shame because it's a great little film. And I think it deserves to be watched by as many people as possible.
Well, I've got to say it was a good shout because I've never heard of Secondhand Lions. And even you telling me about it, I was like, oh my God, it sounds dull. And then secondhand, who wants to buy a secondhand lion? And is it to do with statues? You know, those lion statues that you can get? I have no idea. And then the synopsis is, a young lad goes and spends some time on a farm in the summer of the 1960s. And I'm like, why do I want to watch this?
But are you glad you did?
Yes, I am. And I think we should start talking about Secondhand Lions using the criteria of the script, the casting, the sound, music and score, visual effects and video quality. So I'm going to kick off talking about the script first. How to describe it. So basically you've got a 14-year-old lad called Walter who's got the most horrible mother in his life. And she basically drops him at their great uncles Hub and Garth on their farm. And we first meet Hub and Garth when they're knee deep in water, fishing using a gun, which kind of sums up their personalities. And then Walter quickly discovers the pair have got no telephone, not got no TV. And the minute that he asks the question about what do they do for fun, a travelling salesman turns up and promptly gets shot with a couple of shotguns that Hub and Garth have got handily by their side. And this kind of just sets the tone up for the film. It's a bit of a comedy, bit of a love story. And it's a story within a story as well, because as the film goes on, Walter discovers a photo of a woman that leads to flashbacks when he speaks with Garth, and Garth tells Walter about a story in the past when Hub and Garth were in the Foreign Legion. Hub fell in love with an Arabian princess named Jasmine. She was promised to a powerful sheikh, and after Hub and Jasmine married, the sheikh put a price on Hub's head, kept them in constant peril from assassins, and finally won a duel against the sheikh and spared the sheikh's life, warning him to cease a manhunt against him and his princess, Jasmine. So Walter is basically learning this story as he spends the summer with Hub and Garth. And then Hub and Garth are also kind of learning how to live again with Walter by their side, because they'd kind of gotten into this bit of a rut and they were just spending day by day waiting to die, I think. So yeah, it's a bit of a feel-good movie. You get to learn all about this kind of subplot and sub-story that Hub and Garth have got. And at the end of the film, this little timid 14-year-old boy is strong enough to turn around to his mum and tell his mum exactly what he wants out of life. So it's quite a powerful message, I think. What did you guys think? Is that kind of a good summary of the plot?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, actually. Sums it up perfectly.
So I did a bit of research, and Secondhand Lions is written and directed by Tim McCains, and he's best known for writing the screenplay for 1999's The Iron Giant. What kind of shocked me was, other than tinkering with a few scripts, because he's a script doctor by trade, he wrote this screenplay, and then that's it. We've not really seen much of him at all ever since. And I think that's a bit of a shame, because Secondhand Lines has actually got some really nice directorial flair and some nice touches to it.
Oh yeah, I agree.
And he wrote a story that had got several layers. So the way I looked at it was that we've got a feel-good story, which is the kind of whole looking at the film as itself. But then we've also got the boy grows up story with Walter. You know, he's abandoned by his mom. He hasn't got a clue what he's going to do with life. And at the end of the film, actually, he's deciding that he doesn't want to be with his mum. He wants to go to college. He wants to start doing certain classes. And he's telling his new adopted parents what he wants. So what do we think of that kind of story?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle to even label the film as in a certain type of film, certain type of story, just because there are so many different things going on. Like with some films where you've got lots of different things going on and it's not coherent, these all fitted together quite nicely. But if someone said, what category would you put it in? I'd still struggle.
Me, I would look at it. I felt the coming of age story, you know, for Walter. I think that resonated with me a lot, as far as you know, the way that it was told. And again, yeah, it has so many layers in it. But definitely for me, what stuck out was the Walter story and the coming of age, and yeah, a lot of symbolism. You know, even with the lion, which was madness.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the lion for a moment. So these travelling salesmen start turning up because they get a sense that Walter and Hub are sitting on millions. They're sitting on literal millions. There's a rumour that's gone round. So everybody from ne'er-do-well relatives who are just kind of money grabbing, right the way through to travelling salesmen of the 60s, just turn up at this farm every 5 minutes for the seals of it and trying to sell him stuff or sell them stuff. And some of the charm and some of the comedy comes from the fact that they do buy off these travelling salesmen. And one of the things that turns up is a secondhand lion, which you might think, why the hell have they got a secondhand lion? But Hub and Garth were in the were in the French Foreign Legion and did spend some time all over kind of Africa. So to them, bringing a lion back is quite natural. Whereas us in the audience are going, what the hell are they doing with a lion? And their plan is obviously shoot the lion and hang its head up in what mantelpiece that they don't own. But they open this lion up and they discover quite a docile end of its life kind of lion, which is also a bit of a metaphor for Hub and Garth, really, because they are literally just sitting around, moping around as well at this point. Yeah, that lion, it does steal the show a little bit towards the end, doesn't it?
Yeah, so definitely it was a heartfelt film. I really enjoyed it. You know, even, you know, coming back to rewatch it, I enjoyed it more because I found a better understanding of what the director and writer were trying to say. So,
I mean, so we've got the coming of age story from Walter, and then we've got this second layer, which is the underlying story of these two men that we kind of just see sitting on a porch. And these two men have an amazing backstory, and they fought in wars. They've lived life to the full. You know, I think one of them, I think Hub turns around and says he's loved one woman, he's fought in several wars, and he's killed countless men. And you know, you can really kind of understand where they're coming from. And as Walter is learning their story, it's shown in flashback, and the flashbacks are in such a fun style. I mean, it's so playful. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of Errol Flynn. You know, somebody somewhere has been watching
That's
Errol
what we
Flynn.
were on about last night.
I struggle is not the word, but I was looking at it as from a standpoint as is this real? Like, is he telling the truth, or is Walter imagining everything in his own world, or did this all really happen? And then, of course, towards the end, you see the guy in the plane, a helicopter rather. So it's like, huh? You know.
Yeah, I was exactly like you. I was watching it going, this he's got to be embellishing the story. There's got to be some, you know, he's got to be looking back with rose tinted glasses. You know, perhaps they did meet a woman, and Did they fight in the French Foreign Legion? I don't know. And then, like you say, there's something that happens towards the end of the film, right actually at the very end of the film, and that was a really, really clever touch, because then that then ties all of that story together, and it almost kind of sews it up to be, yes, it was true.
Right.
But there's still a little bit of doubt as to whether it's all true.
Exactly.
It's certainly a fun raconteur, I think, of what those two men went through. So we've got Walter's arc, we've got the story of the two men in their exploits, I think in the 1914 onwards, wasn't it? From what I understand, wasn't it? First World War?
Yeah.
And then the third layer is actually Hub and Garth themselves, who have lived life to the max and are now sitting in a dilapidated farmstead watching the days go by. And a recurrent theme, and there's something that slightly annoyed me, really, was the fact that they kept going on about how much time they don't have left, and they had given up, and they weren't afraid to tell everybody and anybody about it, much the time that Walter actually spent some of the movie trying to convince them to stay alive.
Yeah.
Right.
So having Walter around actually showed them a new lease of life, I think.
I mean, we re-watched it last night, so it's still really fresh in my mind, and I'd watched it a few times before. But Mark came home from work today and he says, I've been thinking about that film. And he said, you've got the second-hand lion that's the actual lion, but could Garth and, is it Hub?
Hub, yeah.
Hub. Could they be second-hand lions themselves?
I thought that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that.
I never even saw that until he said, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I'm sure that when I was doing a bit of reading, one of the French Foreign Legion kind of squads, that I don't know if I want to call it squads or what, but was called Secondhand Lions. So I wasn't sure whether or not the link was there.
Oh, okay.
Wow,
but yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was something that I read when I was just doing a bit of research for this.
No, I can see that. I can definitely see it.
And the way that the lion came to its end doing something it enjoyed is echoed.
It is.
Mm-hmm.
It is, definitely. And that was one of the other things that kind of I wondered about, was the inconsistency of their age. Because when, let's just say to the end that they don't make it and they do die, they must be in the 90s at that point. So what age are they when they're talking to Walt? Because that's what I was trying to work out, where the ages kind of sit. Are they in their 70s? Are they in their 60s? They're obviously older than the 60s, I think.
You'd have to work back from how old would they be in 1914, roughly?
They've got to be in their late teens, I should imagine.
Yeah, and then if it's like mid-60s or something. Oh, there's a bit of maths going on there.
I know, there isn't there.
It's hard to say, because they push the movie as these really manly men. So even if they were in their late 70s, they're still these manly men, and they may have aged well, because they were always on the move. So you got to think about that too. Yeah,
that's true. And that's the thing, isn't it? They've both, well, not so much Hub, but Garth, I think, definitely has a particular outlook on life in terms of how he wants men to grow up. The little talk that he likes to give them.
The talk. I like the talk.
Yeah, and it's all positive, isn't it? It's all about virtue and choosing what you want to believe, but making sure you stand by your own convictions and bringing people back onto the straight and narrow. One of the things when the writer was creating the film, he had actually seen a documentary about prisoners and how a lot of inmates have no direction and no strong fatherly figure. So that's what he wanted to kind of bring in and instill, which is why you see Walt as this kind of on the verges of becoming a bit of a teenage tearaway, although we don't really see that side of him. And then he's given this direction by these two men, and then he's a much stronger character at the end. And he hasn't gone down the route of being, a total idiot. And that's the kind of message that that the director was looking for, which I thought was quite powerful. So I gave the script, because I think it pretty much does exactly what it sets out to do. I gave it a 9. What do you think?
I gave it an 8, but not for any like harsh reasons or anything. I just, it flowed nicely. It kept my attention throughout, which a lot of films struggle to do. And even with the flashbacks, that they fitted in so well. So yeah, I was probably a bit harsh giving it an 8.
Well, I've toyed with an 8 and a 9 for a little while, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it does. I mean, at the 1 hour mark, I was checking my watch. It does drag a little bit, but I couldn't really, thinking about it and thinking back on it, I can't mark it down for that because of how it was structured.
Yeah.
Right. I was gonna say I gave it an 8 also, and you know, like you said, it's a bit harsh, but I think that it did have some slow points, and this could have been more of the directing side, but I do think it had a lot to do with the script. But there was also I didn't feel like, I felt like he could have did better in fleshing out the story with the lion, or not only the lion, but the even with the boys. It felt kind of thrown in there. Oh, and especially the guy at the end, the boyfriend. I felt like they just kind of threw it in there just to have the lion do something.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, now you just kind of trying to create some action or some conflict, and it of course it made sense, but it didn't, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, you could have quite easily had the story without the boyfriend.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I think that's what it was. He needed the lion to do something. This could have been a studio pool also, filmmaker. This could have been a studio, like, hey, we got to get some action or something in there, and you know, made him create a scene. So you also got to think about that. But I definitely felt like it was something that the writer either didn't intend to put, or he put it fast, or he put it because somebody made him put it, because it just didn't seem his style. If you watched through the whole movie, it was kind of a detour. But again, I've talked to studios, so I know how it is. They make you do stuff for the money.
Oh, that's a great observation. All right.
So I always look at it from a different eye. It's like, oh, that's a studio right there. They did that. You know, so and I can watch a lot of things, and I can tell when the studio pool comes into play. Like, oh, that's a studio pool. You know. But anyway, yeah.
Oh, that's good insight that we wouldn't normally have. So thank you. Have you got any more comments on script and screenplay?
I haven't. I don't think. I'm just checking.
All right. So I'll rejig it and we'll give it an 8.
Okay.
Okay. So there are obviously some key names in the casting. It's a relatively small cast throughout the film, but we've got some key names. So we've got Haley Joel Osment, we've got Michael Caine, and Robert Duvall. Obviously, are the 3 centre characters who I've picked to kind of talk about. Have you guys got any kind of thoughts or notes on any other characters?
Now, I say don't discard the mom, because I think she was phenomenal. I think she played her role really, really well.
She must have done, because I really didn't like her.
That was the point.
Yeah. So, such an unlikable character. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, you're right. She did a really good job.
Oh, yeah, she did, because everybody hated her. I didn't like her either, but, you know. But I liked her as an actress.
And I kind of sit back and wonder about how much input the actors had on their characters and on the film, because it strikes me that everybody seemed to get on. Everybody seems to be sitting back and having their moment and not wanting to crowd anybody else, from what I saw, which was really nice. We've got Haley Joel Osment. Now, back in 2003, he was coming from a career as child star, Sixth Sense and AI. He'd been in just before Secondhand Lines. And I think he's just about still got his adolescent kind of naivety. He hasn't quite grown past his adolescent stage yet. So I think he was perfect casting as Walter. And I thought he played it with the right amount of inquisitiveness and vulnerability. And also emotionally, I think he was a match for the other 2 that must have took some doing from a young actor to be looking up to those two kind of giants of their scene. I thought, you're talking about the mom, I thought his closing scenes with his mom were tremendous, where he was kind of pushing back and he let his emotions show, and she kind of took that step back a little bit, I thought, and just let him get on with it.
See, at that point, I did wonder whether, like, the mom could have as the mom redeemed herself by doing that, and then I just thought, no, she was being very selfish anyway. But I could see that, you know, some people would think, oh yeah, she's done the right thing, but was it purely for selfish reasons? I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I think she was completely selfish.
Yeah.
She had the straight line character development. She was selfish all the way through. You know, there were no arcs, there were no curves. She was just selfish. So I don't believe she was redeemed. But I do want to speak about. We're done with the mom and the main cast.
Yeah,
I wanted to kind of beat her to the supporting cast. Okay, yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention that I for one really believe that the guy that's playing the young Herb was actually the old Herb, and that's what you call great casting directing, right? Because even when they were in and out, I never thought once that was a different guy. I always believed that it was Herb, and when you can pull that off, you're a great actor, or you guys, you're definitely in sync. I just, did you guys notice that you didn't even think about it? Yeah. Well, I didn't even think about it.
Perfectly put. And yeah, I think when they cut through to his story, and there he is doing his best Errol Flynn, and he's doing his sword fighting, the mannerisms that he's got carry through to old Herb. Yeah, and that reminds me of what we spoke about before, David, for your Once Upon a Lifetime, when your girls and they go through the ages and they carry that character trait through. It was another classic example of that working really well.
Yeah, and it definitely takes direction, and it takes great casting. So they did a wonderful job on it. Because I'm watching the film and I didn't even think about it, like, because you can watch some things and you can do a flashback and it takes you completely out. Because the characters just don't match, and to go on, that happened for me with this film between Haley Joel Osment and the older person playing him. It didn't fit.
No.
Yeah.
It didn't fit at all. Like, it was so jarring. It was like, oh my God, like, why? What are you doing?
Yeah, they were completely different. Because when he's standing there at the end, isn't he? He's standing there as an adult Walt, and he's just kind of looking around. And to be honest, I think he looks a bit gormless. But
so you went from a pitch perfect to completely off. So I don't know what happened with that.
So shall we talk about a couple of the main two now? So we've got Michael Caine and Richard Duvall.
Robert Duvall.
We've got Michael Caine and Robert Duvall.
Sorry.
I'm going to edit that, and it's just going to be us laughing at the fact that it's Robert Duvall for no reason.
Yeah.
All right. So Michael Caine, then. It's easy to look at Lions and go, "Wow, you've got Michael Caine." But if you think about it, we're joining Michael Caine in probably a quieter point of his career in 2003. Yes, he's working, but he's only done roles, small parts in, say, Miss Congeniality. He was in Austin Powers Goldmember. So he wasn't the main draw in any of the films that he was doing up until this point, which goes back to your point, Chelsea, of the fact that it went under the radar. And I think that's purely because you've got some A-list stars, shall we say, but we've got A-list stars that are going through a dull patch. So it's easy to see that kind of Lions was another small film for him to do at the time. But all of that changes, obviously, in a couple of years past Lions, when obviously Nolan's Batman films kick off and Michael Caine's career goes on an upward trajectory again. But as Garth, I thought he was great. And I remember when you told me about it and that Michael Caine was in it and he was doing comedy, I was like, what? You kind of forget that he does have a comedic tint to his repertoire, so to speak. and it comes across really well here. And it's not an out-and-out comedy performance in terms of one-liners, but what he does do is he brings certain key mannerisms and certain key actions and the odd wry smile to the lines that he's been given, and that's what makes the comedy. Or he's not afraid to stand there in the most ridiculous of outfits, and also that slight grumpiness when the in-laws come round. All of that gives it a sense of warmth. The other thing is when he's talking to Walter, I think that you can really believe the story that he's telling him, and he's such a good raconteur. And even Walter at that point is actually not questioning what he's being told, and us as an audience aren't questioning what we're being told. It's only a bit further on in the film when it starts to get a little bit whoa with the story that we kind of think about it. So I thought he was almost like a grandfather-y type character to Walt.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely tuck Walter in, immediately, and not sure. I'm not sure of why though. Like, did you catch why? Like, he was so open, so quick. You got these two hard men, and it's like it happened rather quickly.
There was a moment, wasn't there, when Waltz ran off. They're talking about taking him to an orphanage or putting him in a bag and putting him in the lake. It isn't as sinister as it sounds. But there is that moment, and he runs off and he goes and he tries to find his mom, and then realizes his mom is a complete and utter liar. And he's sat there on the steps of this old 1960s petrol station, and Walt and Hub have gone and find him, and they sit next to him and they have a conversation. And I think it's at that moment because Michael Caine's character asks him about his mom, and then that's when he lets out that she's a liar in this, and you can see his eyes change and his reaction changes to, actually, no, you're not actually here to steal my money. You're here because your mum's a rungun.
Gotcha.
So for me, it was at that point that I think that he takes it because Garth isn't convinced.
Right. Oh yeah. No, not at all.
And you've got Michael Caine talking, looking over to Robert Duvall and giving him all sorts of eye movements while this kid's looking down at a map, and I think that says everything.
That was a good catch. Yeah, I did. I saw it, and I'm thinking, yeah, definitely, I see it now.
It was more to do with their reactions and their play off each other that you saw that decision made. It wasn't like in a speech or a communication, I don't think.
Right.
With the casting of Michael Caine, for me, I've only ever associated him being English in English films. And obviously he's well known for his English accent. And it wasn't until last night when we were watching it and Mark said, I can't get on with the American accent from Michael Caine. It's weird because you don't hear him like that. But I never even noticed. So surely, for me, he was cast, perfectly. I don't know how well his accent, how well he did his American accent, but it never even struck me that that's an English person.
I didn't even know he was English.
Oh,
so that means the accent worked.
Wow.
So,
yeah, I mean, he's got a very, I want to say, London Cockney type accent, doesn't he? Because he's very famous for certain lines. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I've got a note that it was quite a restrained performance, I think, from Caine. I don't think it was an over-the-top flamboyant one. So I just wondered if he'd been reined in or whether he just turned up on the day and went, this is how I'm going to play my character.
Or is it because I would place him on the same level as Robert Duvall, whereas in other films I've seen Michael Caine in, it's been Michael Caine is the star.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
he hasn't had to share with anyone.
And on that point, Robert Duvall, nice segue to Robert Duvall. And obviously Robert Duvall's main fame is The Godfather, isn't it?
I knew of him, and I'd even forgot until I looked it up that he was in Apocalypse Now.
Ah.
I'm not saying he's forgettable, but he was in Falling Down, which I really like. But again, I had to be reminded that he was in that. But when I do see him act, I think he's very good indeed. It's just that I don't remember him as much as Michael Caine.
And I think that's the point. I wasn't quite sure until I looked at IMDb and then saw the list of films that he'd been in. But obviously, the kind of Godfather is the one that kind of stands out for me. And I just wondered whether or not all the Al Capone references and the Mafia references were a reference to that.
It could be a good link.
One thing that I couldn't kind of grasp is the disconnect between the two younger ones and their older selves. Not in terms of obviously what we've discussed about who's playing them and how well it's acted, but the actual story behind, you've got these two men who have lived life to the full. There's no doubt about it. They've had an exciting career, but now in their, say, 70s, they're sitting together as bachelors in a farmstead in the middle of nowhere. And I just wondered what happened. Yeah, what choices were made from riding around on horseback avoiding assassins to sitting with a shotgun trying to shoot traveling salesmen.
I think that played out. With them complaining about their age, right? I can't do the things that I used to do, so I'm just not going to do anything. And it's more of that. In my opinion, it's more of that fear of failure because they are old, and I mean, you can't run and shoot when you're 70. So do you? These are the type of guys to me that are not going to risk that kind of failure out in any kind of field. So it's more of I'm done. I'm retired. I'm waiting to die. And I'm saying this is just my take on it, and I just feel like. Knowing men like that, when they do start to age like that, they do give up. I don't know if that's an American thing, but I've seen it before, in real life.
It's not just an American thing.
Okay. But yeah, it's just like, they get old and they don't want to accept it. Actually they do. They just fall into it,
Yeah, and I think that's right. They have just kind of fallen into this way of life, I guess.
Right. And it's obvious that it's a choice because they got the money not to. They got the money not to live like that. So it's obviously a choice. That's my take on it.
But that makes the ending, it's so much more of a contrast, which is good. That because they weren't just waiting around, were they? They actually did something.
That's the spark that Walt gave them, I think. I think if Walt hadn't have turned up that summer, they wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have had the ending the way that they did. They wouldn't have gone with their boots on.
No.
Right.
Talk about kind of Robert Duvall. You really do believe that he's a brother of Michael Caine.
Well, I never questioned it, so yeah.
Yeah. So again, casting-wise, I think it was absolutely spot on. I can't think of who else in that era, in that time back in 2003, that would have worked as well as those pair.
I tried to think of someone, and I came up with Christopher Walken, and then didn't like it. So,
oh wow!
So I decided to just keep the original two.
I mean, Christopher Walken is an amazing actor, but yeah, he wouldn't have been right.
Yeah, I just couldn't imagine anybody else in those roles.
No, I can't. With kind of the casting, I actually went with a full 10.
Oh.
What do you guys think?
I don't know if we're doing half points, but if I could do half, I would do a 9.5, 9.5. If not, I'll just do a 9. And that's only because, like I said, that guy, the older Walter, it bothered me.
Yeah, kind of making me redo my score.
But everything else was perfect and spot on. But that thing, it stuck out like a sore thumb. Like he just stuck out from the beginning, and then they showed him again at the end, and it was like, yeah. But anyway, that's why I say if you do have 9.5, if not, we'll go just to 9 because I can't push it to a 10 because of that guy.
What do you think, Charles?
9.
9. Okay, fine. We give 9 for the casting of Secondhand Lions. Right, we're on to sound, music, and score now. All I'd say with that is that Patrick Doyle has composed it. It's not a composer that I'm familiar with. However, he has 70 credits. And back in 2003, he'd got Great Expectations, Hamlet, Bridget Jones's Diary, and Donnie Brasco under his belt. But I think as good as those films are, I think in Secondhand Lions, I think he's played it too safe. I don't remember a single piece of the score but I do remember some of the music that was played. The score is generic. If you think of a farm in Texas somewhere, or you think of an old western, you've got the score pretty much in your head already as to what he's done. So I think from that, it kind of lets the film down a bit.
Yeah.
And then there's the music, which at first I thought was really, really clever. When the Travelling Salesman turned up, you'd got Let Me In by the Sensations playing, and I thought that was a brilliant touch. And I thought we were in for some sort of Baby Driver style brilliance, where all of the sounds and needle drops kind of matched what was going on. But I was wrong. And then it just became really generic. So you think of a farmstead in the middle of nowhere, you've got Texas Playboy rag. You think of a fight in a bar, you've got Bubbles in My Beer playing. And the cleverness in the music just didn't stick. For me, I was pretty underwhelmed.
Only since I've been reading your reviews have I started watching films with that criteria in mind. So I do try and listen out for music or songs or soundtrack, anything. And some of the music, or I should say the score, I suppose, was really apparent, especially in the flashback sequences. But most of the time, I never noticed anything. You just talking about that song, I don't remember hearing any songs at all, just a few pieces of instrumental music. So I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, whether I was too focused on what was going on to notice. But no, never really noticed anything like that.
See, I noticed the Sensations playing, and that kind of struck me. And I thought, "Oh, cool! I like this. This is cool. You know, that's a really fun kind of edit." So then I started listening out for it, and then when certain tracks were playing, I'd got the phone on and I was trying to Google what song was playing in the background. So I was kind of looking forward to that point. But you're right. Other than that, I would have probably just skimmed straight through it and not paid a blind bit of attention to it.
Yeah, and I think that you said the word, where there was nothing. I mean, wasn't bad, wasn't good. It was just, you said it when you said he played it safe, because I'm like Chelsea. Is Chelsea correct pronounced?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't remember one song from that movie. But I don't remember that it was bad. So that's a good thing. Because if the music is bad, you were like, oh God, that music was awful. So I don't remember it was good, but I don't remember that it was bad. So it was just, across the board, generic.
So have we got any more to say about the sound, music and score? Because the other thing to say about the sound actually is obviously it's an old film. It hasn't been remastered, so it's not on Atmos, just a standard 5.1, I think, that I watched it in. Audio was okay, but that was it. It's an okay-ish film. So, yeah, anybody else got anything to say?
No, that was my shortest amount of notes for that section, to be honest.
Oh, wow. Well, I gave it a 5.
Okay, I gave it 4.
4, fine.
And I gave it a 7. and only because I can't remember anything bad about it, but I don't remember anything good either. So it's like, benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's kind of why I went with a 5, straight down the middle. All right, visual effects and costumes next.
Okay.
So there aren't that many visual effects. There are a couple. And the main effect, I think, was brilliantly bookended the film when we had the plane. So the film opens with a plane and closes with a plane. Thought what they did with that was really fun. And that really set the tone for the film, I thought, as well. That let you know that you're in for a bit of a comedy. There are other effects in the film as well. So there's a boat that ends up on a lake, which is obviously a composite picture by the look of it. And Garry Jones actually was the chap who was in charge of visual effects back in 2003. His claim to fame was The Princess Diary and Spider-Man and The Spider-Man 2 a little bit later on. And that's really all I've got to say about visual effects.
For the thing about visual effects, if you didn't really notice any, then they did a good job. Of course, things there are a lot of things that are visual effects that you wouldn't even consider or even think about seeing it here. So that means that they did a good job, because visual effects goes into things like simple things with taking the city's skyline out the background to make sure that it looks like farm. Taking the neighbors' houses out of the background to make sure it looks wide open. So those, we got things like that take place. And again, if you don't notice them, that means they did a great job.
The other thing that I thought was really good were the costumes. Yeah. Not only were they good, but they were used for comedy effect as well. And I'm thinking of when they dress up for gardening and they come out of the ranch.
The dungarees.
Yeah. But it's not just that, it's the look on their faces as they're wearing these gardening outfits.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I just thought that was a really nice touch.
My main thing was the costumes, to be honest. I've got it's set in the 60s, so you got a real feel for that era by looking at what they were wearing. There was something about props that I included, because things like on the drive to the house with all those signs, it kind of built up, oh gosh, what are they heading towards?
I've got something to say about the signs, but I'll talk about that in the video section.
There's one thing, I don't know whether it would come under visual effects or not. Probably not. I don't know where it would fit in. But I watched this on DVD. The title menu, how that was all set up and everything, did not match with the film at all. The music, the tone of it, the animation, it was wrong. It just didn't gel. But again, if you go to the cinema and see it, or if you watch it on a streaming service, you haven't got that. But it really put me off in the beginning, because it's not how I remembered the film. And I know it's only about 3 seconds of something before you click play. But it just, didn't match. And I've never noticed anything like that before. So I blame you, Garry, for making me look out for things like that.
Sorry.
That's all right. It's like it was just plucked from anywhere. Like somebody was brought in, you've got to do, is it a title menu that they're called?
Yeah,
you've got to do the title menu. This is the film. This is what it's about. And it was all jolly and jaunty and a bit childish in a way. But if you haven't seen the DVD title menu, right, it won't make sense.
No, I ended up renting it from iTunes.
You did wisely there then. You haven't missed anything.
It was only £3.50, so not bad, is it, really?
Can't even go to the cinema for that.
No. All right, unless we've got anything else to say on visual effects and the costumes, I just gave it a straight 10 because I thought it was great.
Likewise, straight 10.
Oh, I gave it an 8. I feel like I'm being really harsh on this film that I really like.
Why did you give it an 8?
But visual effects, I didn't feel that there was much for me to notice. Again, I'm still quite new to this, watching films and paying attention to them and using this criteria. And it was mainly the costumes that stood out for me rather than any effects or anything. But like David said, if you don't notice it, then they've done a really good job.
And because a lot of the tiger was visual effects. The tiger.
Oh yeah, with the puppet. Yeah. Well, so I've got a soft spot for the lion.
No, it was good. It wasn't bad. And even when he ran into the cornfield, like if you pay attention, it's all visual effects.
I'd still only give it an 8 though.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. You see, I look at it this way. So I start off with a 10, and then I knock points off for anything that I notice. And as I didn't notice anything, I left it at a 10. If something feels out of the ordinary, if something's a bit off, then I'm thinking actually that's going to impact. So that knocks my scoring down a little bit. The more I notice, the lower the score goes.
Makes sense.
And I didn't really notice anything. I couldn't really knock it down. And I thought, if the costumes look like they're from the 1980s, then we'd have done a lower score. But I think everything matched, and it set out what it did to do with the budget that it had got. I think. Good going for Garry Jones at the time. We're happy to talk about the video and the cinematography.
I can't really add much to that because
Jack Green was the chap in charge of cinematography, and by 2003 he had done some of my favourite films of that particular era, I guess. So he'd done Firefox, 48 Hours, Beverly Hills Cop, Starman, and one of my favourite films of all time, Unforgiven.
Yeah, and I can tell. You naming those, I can see it.
Yeah, Gene Hackman, Morgan Freeman. in Richard Harris in Unforgiven, and you go from that through to Secondhand Lions, and his style is evident. It carries through really well, I just thought. And on the other thought was, we're talking about those boards on the way into the ranch. I've just watched Ghostbusters Afterlife. And the opening shot, and there's another sequence just as the film starts. You drive up to a big spooky ranch, and on that driveway are all these signs saying "Do not enter," and it's almost like if you were to layer those shots side by side, they would be identical.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, Reitman, have you just ripped off Secondhand Lions?
Oh, at least he's seen it.
He's either seen it or it's a very, very happy accident. And I thought there were some lovely wide shots, and there were some elements where he lets the camera just focus on the characters and on what they're saying, rather than being distracted with something else that's going on in the background, or a wider shot that you perhaps could have done. And the other thing I liked was there's a couple of scenes that were at night in front of the lake, and I thought they were really well shot, and you'd still got the either the shot or the effect shot of the moon across the lake. And I just thought that was a really nice touch.
So that links into what I thought. At no point when I was watching it did I think, oh, this is a bit dark, this is a bit fuzzy, I can't see it properly. And that's the majority of things just lately that I seem to watch. It goes really dark in places, and it was just so bright all the way through. And then I've tried thinking about it far too much and thought, is that trying to show Walter's positivity and brightness and his outlook on life? But it's obviously just from, what you said about the style. Yeah,
and you're right. More modern films, they just go really dark. I mean, if you look at the Batman, there's a great picture going around at the moment showing you all of the versions of the Batman. So you've got Batman from the 1960s, really bright poppy colours, and then Batman 2022 is just a black square.
Oh.
It just goes darker and darker and darker. So there is a trend to strain our super duper TVs that can show all shades of colour, but there's a trend to just make it show all the shades of black, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, so for me, cinematography, I thought it was really good. I thought that he has a very intimate style where he does do character focus or character driven cinematography. With this particular movie, I did think that he could have got more of the countryside feel, right? Show more of that just the environment, just a touch more, because I feel like there is so much that he could have showed, and he didn't choose to, because I'm assuming he didn't want to open the movie up too much, to make it too broad. But it's such a beautiful countryside not to show in a movie like that, enough. Like you said, even with the lake, he showed it, but it's still much, much more that I feel like could have been pushed into the film.
Yeah, I agree, because you have the shots of them, as we talked about, going up towards the ranch. But if you'd have panned left or right, then we would have seen much more of the land that we're on. We didn't get to see it, yeah.
But other than that, it was a beautiful, intimate, character-driven, look that he gave. And I think that's what he was trying to accomplish, and I think he did it well.
So top marks there for Jack Green. So what would you give it? Because I gave it a 10, but now you're saying that, I'm thinking of coming down.
I give it an 8, just because I feel like we missed a lot that, we missed a lot of beautiful shots, the opportunity for those beautiful shots.
I gave it a 9, but now I want to give it a 10 because I'm just so pleased with the whole overall brightness of it.
Batman has completely threw you off.
Yeah. I'll stick with my 9.
Fair enough. So on my original ratings, when I kind of totaled them all up, I actually gave it an 8.8 overall, which is a recommended rating, Chelsea.
Excellent.
So what do you think? How do you feel about that?
I just would like more people to watch it because it's just missed by so many, and I think a lot of people have a certain type of film that they like, but this can appeal to so many different likes.
Yeah, it's a great film.
I'm glad that other people have watched it and not just me.
Well, that's the whole point. Trying to do this the green screen, so we all get to see new stuff. And like you say, if you're always watching the same genre of film or the same style, then you don't broaden your horizons. And it's great to be able to see something like this. Yeah, I know you said you couldn't really pigeonhole it into what it is, but I think it's a feel-good family movie. It's got a heart. It's got an arc to what it's trying to say, and it's also a comedy with a bit of an action touch. So it's a feel-good family comedy movie action film.
Yes. But what happened to the giraffe?
I just think that was in transport.
Oh, okay. Going to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us on Green Screen. I hope you all enjoyed listening to what we'd got to say and listening to our ramblings about it. And I hope you go and check out the film. So Secondhand Lions. It's on most streaming sites, I believe, to rent, or you can buy discs or DVDs or however you want to watch it, but just go out and watch it. And I think we need to pick a film for next time as well now. David, when you were on the podcast last, your first ever podcast appearance, we spoke and you talked about there's Purple Rain.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I see. I remember.
Oh, yeah. Great movie. I actually was talking about it just today with somebody else.
How about we watch Purple Rain as our next
I'm
film?
happy to give it a go.
I would love to watch it for the probably 127th time. Purple Rain is a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never seen it, so I'm willing to watch. I've heard many things about it, just never seen it. One of those films that everybody else has seen and I haven't.
Just know it's not for everybody.
Well, okay. I'll bear that in mind.
So yeah, it's one of those things where I honestly love it and I think it's more because I can just relate to the story. You know, it's just it has a close relation to the way I grew up and things. So anything I can relate to, I just fall in love with because it reminds me of a piece of myself.